All right, and welcome to the Nuggets All-Decade Team summary, review, whatever you want to call it. But here we go. I'm going to be telling you the first team, second team, third team. I'll probably lead up into the first team. That will be the last one. So this is the Nuggets team best overall players from the decade at every position. Now, I want you all to know that you're in fairly good hands. I have been an avid Nuggets fan since about 2004, and the peak, the precipice, the summit of my fanhood was from the years of 2010 to 2014, and obviously I've kept up. I've watched pretty much every game since then, so you guys are in good hands. I know what I am talking about at a certain extent. So let's get into it. Let's start with, not to disparage anyone, but I did a worse team, okay? This is the team that is a mixture of the least amount of talent, the Nuggets' overall performance when these guys are playing. So you're going to see a lot of players from the 2014 to 2016 era, the dark ages of the Nuggets franchises, in my life, I like to say, from 2013 to 2014 season to the 15 to 16 season. So the years where they were under 500 every year, they were picking up players from out of nowhere that were playing for them. So let's get right into it. Without further ado, worst team all decade, 2010 to 2020. At the point guard position, we have Emmanuel Mudiay. Mudiay was a guy who I was always rooting for. I always wanted him to succeed. He's 2 months older than me. He's from my draft class. He just could never figure it out for the Nuggets. He was a turnover machine for them. Every time he got the ball, he had some hot quarters, but every time he got the ball, he would turn the ball over. Never find a good look. Just couldn't turn out. Couldn't handle the ball that well. Got lit up. I mean, went up against a lot of tough Western Conference competition, but the Nuggets really haven't had a lot of bad point guards. I mean, they've had Chauncey Billups, Andre Miller, Ty Lawson, Jamal Murray, Monte Morris, even Aaron Brooks wasn't that bad. Jameer Nelson. So nothing against you, Emmanuel, but in my opinion, you are a worst point guard of this decade. First team, all worst team of the 2010 decade. I have Randy Foye now at the shooting guard position. So he wasn't my least. So this has nothing to do with talent. I actually enjoyed watching Randy Foye. Mainly, it's just that the shooting guard position has been pretty good for the Nuggets this decade, and you'll see more of that when I talk about the other teams. But at shooting guard, he was probably my worst, and these players have to be getting consistent minutes as well as play, so they have to have play time, and it's a mixture of talent. So that sort of goes into the decision making. So Randy Foye. Just because he never won for the Nuggets. He's one of the only shooting guards all decade. As I said, the dark ages of the Nuggets franchise in my life, the 2014 to 2016 days. He was the starting shooting guard. I'm sure he would have been a talented and a good piece if he was on a more competitive team. But he was the player who led us to all those losses. So that is why he's my first team, all worst team of the decade. Small forward, same goes. So we're going to get into some worse players that we get to power forward and center that I have some more disdain for. But small forward, again, not too many good picks here. I mean, we were blessed with Carmelo, Gallinari, Chandler, Will Barton, you could say, or Torrey Craig. Both of them have led us to a couple playoff years, a couple 48-plus win years. But Quincy Miller, I mean, nothing against him. He was a late second rounder. He had a bunch of high expectations coming into the draft, or coming to college, and then he was drafted where he was. I think he was the 40th overall pick, drafted where he was because of where he was. And he got had a lot of weight on his shoulders early in his career because he arrived right when the Nuggets started to get bad. So a lot of emphasis was put on him to be good, and he was sort of thrown into the fire. So he wasn't that good for us, and then we subsequently got rid of him. But like I said, tough to pick, but he was our worst team, first team, small forward. At the power forward, here we go, a couple guys that I don't like. Power forward, Anthony Randolph. He was the thorn in the side of anyone who was a fan of talent. I believe he was a high first-round draft pick with the Timberwolves, and then I think the Nuggets picked him up in the Carmelo trade. Just so much potential, and then he never turned out. They tried him. He's basically 6'11", slender, power forward with a lot of athleticism, but it never translated onto the court. They tried him at small forward. That failed miserably. Didn't really have a handle. He couldn't shoot. He couldn't really rebound. I mean, he's first team, worst team for a reason. So that is why. So much potential. I believe he was the first to wear 15 after Carmelo. But he was a staple of the dark ages. He got a lot of playing time. They invested a lot into him, and he just never panned out. Speaking of first team, worst team, we're going to move on to the center. We have J.J. Hickson. Now, if you're a casual fan, you're going to think J.J. Hickson was really good. It's crazy I'm still talking about J.J. Hickson in 2019, but he left that big of a mark in my memory. He's one of my least favorite all-time Nuggets. Nothing against him personally, but he would put up so many double-doubles, and everybody would think he's good, and it would translate to how he got paid. But everything was just padded stats, in my opinion. A lot of offensive rebounds after misses. Didn't really have a game outside of 5 feet. Wasn't that good of a defensive rebounder. Everybody bragged and boosted about how good an offensive rebounder he was, but in my opinion, that's just because a lot of his misses. He couldn't really shoot free throws. He was just fool's gold, in my opinion. So, in recap, my first team, worst team is Emmanuel Mudiay, Randy Foye, Quincy Miller, Anthony Randolph, and J.J. Hickson. So if this squad was put out there right now, I would say that is a 16-win team. Okay, now let's get into it. I'm going to speed this up just a tad. We're going to go to our third team all-decade for the Nuggets. So for the point guard position, I have Jamal Murray. Now, the Nuggets point guard position is stacked this decade. Like I said, we've had a lot of good ones. A lot of it has to do with he's only been on the team since 2016-2017 season. He has been the staple of a team that has been competing in the West for the past 2 to 3 years. He shows the most talent potential. I don't want to put too much recency bias into this because let's say Ty Lawson was our current point guard. He was the future. I want to only assess what they have done, not what they may do. So right now I have Jamal Murray as my third team, all Nuggets decade team. Shooting guard, I have Aaron Aflalo. Now, he had a couple stints with the Nuggets, and I really appreciate what he has done for the team. He was with us during the Carmelo era, and then he was with us post-Carmelo. Just this great shooter, great competitor. Every year the Nuggets were competitive. He was an integral part of the team. He was also the reason we got Will Barton, let me remind you, and a first-round pick that turned into Juancho Hernan-Gomez, I believe. So we have a lot to be thankful for Aaron Aflalo. Aaron Aflalo is an assassin. That is the quote. Just an overall great player, just a gamer. Just could score. Score on command. So let's get to smaller forwards. So like I said, small forwards is another position we've been pretty blessed at, post Carmelo especially. But for the third team, I have Wilson Chandler. Like I said, it was basically Gallinari for the entire decade. So there's a little teaser spoiler. We're going to hear from Gallinari at the beginning of this, or at the end of this. But Wilson Chandler, third team, all Nuggets decade at the small forward position. I believe he is top 7, top 8, top 5, somewhere in there in 3 points in Nuggets history. Yeah, I know that 3 points have been shot a lot more than in the history of the game. But Wilson Chandler, great defender, had some injury issues, but was just a perfect backup, especially with Gallinari. Could play him at the 4. They even played him at the 2 early on in his career when the season we got rid of Carmelo. Nice jump shot, athletic, great teammate. Wilson Chandler's our man. At the third team power forward position, I have Paul Millsap. Millsap is probably one of the most talented players in the Nuggets, on the Nuggets team this decade. But in this decade, he's only played 2 years compared to a couple other players who made first and second team. So like I said, I want to say what they've done now for the team. So this isn't like rating all the players. This is what they've done for the Nuggets. So Paul Millsap, he's led the team to 2 winning seasons in his 2 years here. He's catapulted the Nuggets into a contender. He has been a go-to at the end of games. He's good for a bucket, great defender, and mentors the youth. But for what he's done lately, he is one of our more talented players, and he has led us to 2 contending seasons, being probably the second best player on the team. I know there's going to be some testing that Jamal Murray has been the second player, but Paul Millsap's probably been the second best player in those 2 past years. Probably will be the 3rd best this year, maybe the 4th. But Paul Millsap, 3rd team all decade. That's pretty good, pretty high praise for a guy who's only been on the team for 2 years. At the center position, I don't want anybody to laugh, but we are going with Timofey Mozgov. So you guys need to remember the couple years where he was insanely good. This was close between him and JaVale, but Mozgov edged him out for the couple years where he was almost a top 10 center in the entire NBA for those couple years. He had a great touch around the rim, could shoot free throws, was a good rebounder, put up a couple crazy 20-plus point, 20-plus rebound games, was the last piece that the Nuggets would only accept in the Carmelo Knicks trade. They wanted Mozgov so bad they were willing to let that trade collapse. Now, I know that doesn't really have anything to do with his 3rd team value, but out of the Nuggets center history this decade, I would say Mozgov, because he was almost the star of the team for a couple of years, especially 2013-14. I would say he was the most talented player on the team. Integral part of the 2012-2013 team that won 57 games. So Mozgov is our 3rd team, our all Nuggets decade center. Getting to the 2nd team, point guard, we have Ty Lawson. Lawson was the center of the franchise post Carmelo. I want to say it was either him or Gallinari. He was the guy who led us, who was considered one of the best point guards in the league for a couple of years there. All the hopes were put into Ty Lawson and Gallinari's hands post Carmelo, and he did a pretty good job. He was a staple of that 2012-2013 team I just touched upon. One of the speediest point guards in the league at that time. Had a fallout with the team right when the dark ages started. They ended up trading him, I think, for a couple first rounders, but he was a insanely good backup when he was backup for Billups at the beginning of the decade. Turned out was handed the torch at post Carmelo, led the team extremely well, and left right when the bad time started. So maybe that's a testament to how good he was leading the team. 2nd team, shooting guard, we have J.R. Smith. What can you say? Put the ball in that man's hand. He was going to score, especially at the beginning of the decade. One of the staples of the team back then. A lot of these guys were staples of the team. Put the ball in his hand. He was there for the good times, made the playoffs every single year. He was with the Nuggets. After Carmelo, he took over for the scoring for the team. He put the Nuggets on the map. His personality brought eyeballs on the Nuggets games themselves. He wasn't with the team. He was, I think, only for 2 or 3 years in this decade, but him making the 2nd team All-NBA just goes to show how much he helped this Nuggets team in the long run for notoriety and in the long run for success on the court. Led them to 2 to 3 years of playoffs, helping Carmelo, and then also with that team of next man up mentality with Lawson, JR, Gallinari, Kmart, Nene. Speaking of Kmart, well, actually, no, not speaking of Kmart. We're going to go to small forward. 2nd team, all Nuggets decade small forward. We have Danilo Gallinari. Now, I know there's going to be some contest. He was there way longer than the guy who's going to be on 1st team. But, I mean, Gallinari was a great part of the team. He was with us up until 2018. Never made the playoffs, sadly, after the famous 57-win Nuggets team that George Karl won Coach of the Year. For some reason, they fired him after. Gallinari was our 2nd team All-NBA. Just consistent. Had some injury issues like Chandler, but that's why they're the perfect duo. That's why they always end up on each other's team. When one's out, the other's in. Could play him at the 4. Great stretch 4. Could shoot the 3 ball. had a lot of personality, fiery, took the ball to the hoop, a ton of leading scoring games. He was the hope after we got Carmelo that he would develop into something, and a lot of people were disappointed in how he didn't develop into a superstar, but I was very grateful how much he developed into a star for the Nuggets team, and really was a main part of the turnaround after the dark ages in the 17-18 season that got us to 48 wins in this. But Danilo Gallinari, second team all-decade small forward. Power forward, we have Kenyon Martin, Kmart, second team all-Nuggets power forward. Kenyon Martin, fiery, was a star for the team with Carmelo and without Carmelo. Could shoot the ball from the mid-range, especially back then when mid-range shooting was important. Had a touch around the hoop, very powerful, athletic, and was a star in the league. And this is why the Nuggets, in my opinion, had so much notoriety, was because of that early decade team with all the star power they had. And Kenyon Martin was the leading part of that star power. So yeah, Kenyon Martin, second team, all Nuggets decade. Center, Nene, same goes for him. He was sort of the Ringo of the band of that early decade because of all the star power. He was the center of the team, very talented, shoot the ball. Couldn't really shoot the ball that well, but he could make his free throws. Physical around the rim, always made the right decision, and could score the ball around the hoop. Nene, he's still going, still chugging along in the league 9 years later from him being on the Nuggets, and I think this is year 16 or 17 for him in the league. But anyways, he was with us until he was a part of that 57-win team, so for that I bestow upon him second team All-NBA, or All-Nuggets decade center. First team, we have at the point guard position. So this is the best team all decade for the Nuggets at every single position. Let me know in the comments down below if you disagree. Give me your first team all decade Nuggets. For the 2010 decade first team, we had Chauncey Billups. He was our superstar that we acquired from Detroit from Allen Iverson. Really helped Carmelo carry the load for a team with championship expectations and did so very well. Just we're paying him too much, so we had to trade him away, but one of the most talented players on the team all decade. Chauncey Billups, first team all decade, could shoot the ball, could pass the ball, could find the open man, made his teammates better. Mr. Big Shot himself, Denver native, Chauncey Billups. First team all shooting guard. Man, this one's I know some of you guys don't like Andre Iguodala, but I'm going to give it to him. First team all Nuggets decade, and this is why. I know a lot of you are mad at him because if you can't beat him, join him. That's exactly what he did with the Warriors after the Nuggets lost to them in the first round. A lot of people were saying that he was tipping what the Nuggets were going to do because he already had ideas of leaving for the Warriors in that playoff series. But that's neither here nor there because this is all about talent and what they did for the team. He led them to a 57-win season, gave them hope after they traded Carmelo. He was the star who carried the torch at post-Carmelo in that 2012-2013 season, traded for Aaron Aflalo and Evan Fournier, I believe. Led them to that. He was the best player on that 57-win team, in my opinion. The team that we all remember so fondly, most wins all decade for us. So that is why he wins first team all shooting guard for the decade for the Nuggets. Great in transition. That team loved to run. Oh my goodness, he could shoot the moon ball three. Just brought a winning culture to Denver, and for that I am very appreciative despite the fallout after him leaving. First team small forward, I don't think this one's a surprise. It goes to Carmelo Anthony. He was only on the Nuggets for a year and 2 months, 13 months all decade, but his star power and what he did for the Nuggets makes him all team decade. When you think of the Denver Nuggets, you think of Carmelo Anthony, young Carmelo Anthony. The Nuggets all-star himself. I know he was only on the team for 13 months this decade, but he beat out Gallinari just because of the star power that he brought to the franchise. I mean, what's there to say? When he was on the Nuggets, he was putting up 35 points a game, winning games all by himself. I know there's some debate that he shot too much in his ball hog, but they won with him in that strategy, and that was the strategy at the beginning of the decade to give your best player the ball. And that's just what he did. He went to work. And sadly, he wanted out of Denver. He wanted to go back to his home in New York. I was mad at him. That's why I stay with the Nuggets. I'm a fan of the Nuggets because of Carmelo. But he wanted out of Denver to go home to New York. So he forced his way out. Man, there's some contention in this first team. But like I said, one of the best players for the Nuggets in their history. And I think we're going to be retiring at number 15 in a couple of weeks. Now that would be transition if the center was up next. But for the power forward position, similarly to Ty Lawson, this player is going to win first team All Nuggets decade because he was the center of the Nuggets nucleus for a couple of years, carried the torch. At the power forward position, we have Kenneth Faried. Now, similarly to Lawson, he had superstar expectations, but that just wasn't Kenneth Faried's game. He was more of a rebounding role player, but an extremely good role player at that, which made him such a star in this league, and what made when Iguodala was gone, it was, in my opinion, Kenneth Faried's team. Everybody knew Faried when the Nuggets played in the Christmas game in the 2013-14 season. The only jersey they would sell is Kenneth Faried's jersey. So that just goes to show how he was the center of the team, rebounding like crazy. He was a fan favorite. When you think of the Nuggets, you think of Kenneth Faried, similarly to Carmelo. So yeah, first team all power forward. And fittingly enough, we're going to end this all first team all Nuggets center. Nuggets fans, rejoice. Clap your hands right now. Look to the sky. Thank God that we had this player that we somehow found in the second round. From Serbia, number 15, Nikola Jokic. Jokic, man, what's to say? He brought the Nuggets hope after post Carmelo. He is the best player the first All-Star the Nuggets have had, and the best player since Carmelo. I think we all know about Jokic and why his first team. He's been leading this team for the past 2 years, ever since Malone gave him the keys to the offense and the team to say. He can shoot, he can rebound, great teammate, great passer. I really don't got to say anything because I'm sure if you're a Nuggets fan watching this, you know his entire game. The 3 years that has been with the team, 3 to 4 years, he's been one of the most impactful players in the Nuggets franchise history. I want to go out there on a limb and say, I've only been a fan for 15 years, but in my experiences, I would say that he is the Nuggets' second most exciting player next to Carmelo from an outsider's view perspective. And as an insider's perspective, I would say just because of his loyalty and dedication to the team, he is the Nuggets' #1 player of the decade. I'm going to give him all-decade MVP. Nikola Jokic, take us to the promised land. Let's go. Let's get it. All decade. Let's lead the decade with a bang and get us a ring in the 2020 season. Nikola Jokic, you are my all-decade 2010s MVP. So to recap, worst team all Nuggets decade is Emmanuel Mudiay, Randy Foye, Quincy Miller, Anthony Randolph, and J.J. Hickson. Third team is all Nuggets decade is Jamal Murray, Aaron Aflalo, Wilson Chandler, Paul Millsap, and Timofey Mozgov. Second team all Nuggets decade is Ty Lawson, J.R. Smith, Danilo Gallinari, Kenyon Martin, Nene. And first team all Nuggets decade is Chauncey Billups, Andre Iguodala, Carmelo Anthony, Kenneth Faried, and Nikola Jokic. I think if you're going to get Nuggets all-time team on 2K, you're going to see the majority of those first and second teamers on that team. So to recap, thanks for watching. This was fun to do. The Nuggets are going to have another great season. It's been fun being a fan, an avid fan of them all decade long, and I hope some of my fanhood was shed today on this episode. It's been pretty long, so we'll call it an episode of the Nuggets All-Decade 2010 team. Alright, thank you for watching, and go Nuggets.